Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to have me here today. I'm incredibly honored to be invited to join you today and to talk to you about the impact of business, impact on digital on business and on organizations. And we're going to be spending about 30 minutes together doing that. Before just 1 minute, I want to explain what This Fluid World does, because I think it'll help with the rest of the presentation into context, and also why I'm here today talking to you about this subject. This Fluid World was set up about 7 years ago from one belief and one passion, not in the forest, but in London, that the world needed to have different kind of organizations and different kind of leaders to be successful. So we started doing business innovation, which is the necessary transformation that organizations and individuals have to go through to be successful in business in the 21st century. Since then, I've had the honor and the pleasure to work with some of the world's largest brands, but I'm not actually interested in the logos that I have up on this slide. What I'm interested in are the people behind these logos, because they are the people who had the foresight to see that the business world was changing, who had the business acumen to understand that strategy had become too complicated for an executive committee or for just few people in an organization to manage, and also to have the courage to collaborate with the less obvious collaborator, which is this fluid world. And I am going to cover the subject of today in 4 ways. And really, what I would hope that we understand at the end of this is, first of all, what business did we come from? What realities did we come from? Because it's incredibly important that we understand where we came from so we can understand the journey that we have to travel. The second thing that I would like to talk about is the disruption that actually happened, has been slightly mentioned. What is at the heart of the disruption that happened today? Then I'd like to mention the new business realities that we all have to operate in order to be successful in the 21st century, to finally finish with some ideas and requirements for success moving forward. So, talking about the previous business realities, I remember in the mid-90s, when I was working at Cisco, who is actually the company that mass-produced the routers, which made it possible for data to go from one computer to another or to a server. But they were also pioneers in internet, so they had to develop a lot of the thinking, a lot of the understanding about how the internet would impact business. And our CMO stood up on our first worldwide conference and uttered the famous Mark Twain words, "This is the best of times, this is the worst of times." And I really couldn't understand how anyone could call this the worst of times. I was leading the business solutions group that was developing a lot of this thinking about how the internet would impact business. I was developing solutions with some of the world's largest brands. This was categorically the most exciting time ever. How could anyone refer to this as possibly being the worst of times? But of course, the reality is I was too young and too inexperienced to understand what we were asking organizations to do, the change that we were asking organizations to achieve, the fundamental shift that we were requiring of them. Because the world that these organizations were coming from, and where organizations still, to some extent, come from, looked very different than the world that we are living in today. The world these organizations came from was one where competition was between companies of similar size, in geographical areas that we could predict. They had the same value structure chains, they had the same cost structures, and they were primarily physical, never virtual. This competition was predictable. In this world, we spoke at consumers. We sold to consumers. Consumers were relatively subdominant. And in this world, big change, fundamental change was rare. Strategic decisions, well, we had a long time to make those. And windows of opportunities were long, and so were the product life cycles, so that we could get a return on our investment. This world was a stable business environment. And in this world, organizations dominated. Organizations were in control. They were in control of their destiny. They were in control of their value chains. They were in control, often, of the suppliers. And it is in this world, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, that we created the organizations that we work in today. the way that we manage organizations, the way that we lead organizations, our management philosophies, our visions, our structures were created with this business environment in mind. And then, approximately 20 years ago, well, it started before, but we started feeling it approximately 20 years ago, something fundamental changed. Something fundamental changed. And this was as fundamental as the invention of electricity, which we know led to the second industrial revolution. And what changed, purely technically, is that we started coding data and content using ones and zeros. It's as little as that. But what it actually meant is that this content could travel at extraordinary speed. And this content could be stored in tiny, tiny spaces. Again, doesn't sound that exciting. But at the heart of that, it meant that technology became increasingly capable, and technology became increasingly affordable. Let me demonstrate. Every one of you today who have a smartphone in your hand, in your pocket, in your bags, have the same computer power as the whole of NASA had in 1969 when they put a man on the moon. We all have, individually in this room, the same computer power as the organization who put a man on the moon. What do I mean by affordable? If you wanted to buy a TV in the United States of America in 1970, it would cost you $500. Present value, $30,000. As we know, that is not the price of today, and that's what I mean by increased affordability and capability. And that is at the core, at the heart of what we call the digital revolution. It's not an appropriate name. We do not call the second industrial revolution the electrical revolution, because we are truly living through the third industrial revolution. And there is not a region, there is not an industry, there is not an organization, there is not a function that will not be affected by the digital revolution. It'll disrupt business as we know today. It is disrupting business as we know today. Of course, business disruption is often seen with a slight negative feeling. The word disruption means that we are going to be disrupted. But I would like to present to you disruption in digital and innovation in a more positive way. I would like to first talk about how innovation in digital technology is making it possible for organizations to do things that they couldn't do before this innovation. There are possibilities and opportunities for competitive advantage that did not exist before. And then I would like to talk about how it is creating a new player, someone new is joining in, that is going to be a key player in the economy moving forward. Let's first of all talk about what we can do today that we couldn't do before. And I would like to do that by bringing up 6 innovations driven by digital that you will all be very familiar with, but I would like to show you is how organizations are using these to be more competitive, to be more cost-effective, to be more efficient, to be more successful. The first one, of course, is mobility. It's hard to remember a world where we couldn't do things on the go. But here it is, developing business models that are very interesting. First of all, BMW realized that in urban cities, the second car in the home is only used 4% of the time. They have no choice but to find other revenue streams. What did they do? They built a partnership with Six, which is a rental company for cars. And today in London, I can locate through an application a car where it's available in London. I can unlock the car door with this application. I can start the car with this application, but here's the difference. I can rent this car by the minute. Not one more minute than the minute I need it. Cost is always a problem. Healthcare in the United States costs about $200 per doctor's visit in the United States. By the use of technology in this company, they are starting to investigate the opportunities in, for example, being able to visit your doctor using Skype or other technology. When this happens, the cost is $40, a decrease of 75%, and a saving of $104 billion a year in national health care. Digital is also allowing us to take traditional advertising and go beyond traditional advertising, like press, poster, magazines. Nivea in Brazil last year realized that one of the challenges that we have on the beach is, of course, that our mobile phone runs out of juice. So in a traditional magazine ad, they put in a solar charger for the phone so that you could stay at your heart's content, listening to your music or speak on your phone, and that's, of course, at the same time using more Nivea products. But they took digital beyond the traditional magazine and press. So utility marketing is becoming more and more important. How can we bring value in people's life? Like in this case, where this application allows people in Saudi Arabia to assess whether they're going to make it to a store in time before it closes down because of prayer time. So it is our challenge to understand how can we make a difference in people's lives, and how can we integrate ourselves in their lives with the value that we bring. The second, of course, is big data. All this data that we are gathering, but what can we possibly do with it? Macy's, which is a department store, has about 10,000 products. Now, because of big data, they are able to analyze the pricing of their own products in every single store, but also of competition and the external environment, so they can adjust pricing dynamically every day, which means that in less than 2 hours, they know the ideal price for every product everywhere. And in a year, they have about 210 million prices, not 10,000 prices. Dynamic prices made possible because of big data. T-Mobile decreased the attrition rate, how, in 2012? They started analyzing, through big data, their own CRM system, their own databases, but also social media behavior to try to predict when people were about to leave the company. And to stop them from doing so, they did the appropriate gestures, and already in the January and February, March of 2012, they decreased the attrition rate with 50%. 50% less people that left their organization because of this. We can't ignore the Internet of Things when we talk about big data, which is the concept of objects being connected in exactly the same way as your phone is connected. And we have predictions up to 75 billion objects will be connected by 2020. That's 75 billion objects connected and generating data. So this world that we have heard about for so long, about the connected fridge, i.e. your yogurt is in the fridge, the yogurt runs out, it knows it runs out because it has a sensor, it tells the fridge orders, is really not that far away. But the interesting bit here isn't so much that, is if you're in any business, what is your role if objects makes decisions? If the yogurt decides that it needs to be bought, and it tells the fridge, and the fridge tells the retailer, and the retailer ships it to your home, where is the decision from the human being? And therefore, what is the role of communications in this world? How do we get share of object instead of share of voice? And this will be even more interesting when we are the objects that are connected with tracking devices like we have today already. Jawbone allows us to calculate the steps we take, etc. But when we're connected, we will be the objects generating all this data. And in that world, it means that my body will tell me constantly what I like, what I don't like, how I'm doing, how I'm not doing, what I need. It won't be organizations anymore. It won't necessarily be my doctor anymore. It won't be healthcare institutions anymore. It'll be my body telling me exactly what I need. So health and beauty will be entirely individualized. And we have to learn to communicate in that world, to develop products for that world, and to be successful in that world. Of course, we have 3D printing. We're all aware of 3D printing, but we might not be aware of the fact that already 20 years ago, Ford used 3D printing when they manufactured their cars, which means that today, 20 years later, they're in a position to, in 4 days, for $3,000, print parts that would have taken them months to produce and cost $500,000. That's competitive advantage. And Winson in China is today printing buildings. It takes them 1 day to print a floor of this building, and it takes them 5 days to assemble this building. That's competitive advantage. And in the Middle East, it is predicted that 3D printing compounded rate will grow at 59% between now and 2020. Augmented reality, incredibly important. It started really with virtual reality, which is the virtual reality that you see online. And already 6-7 years ago, we had 80 times more virtual farmers in the United States of America than we had real live farmers. People pretending to farm online and having fun. But you know what? These people are buying virtual goods and services online, virtual tractors, virtual cows. And this is going to be an economy by 2016 that conservatively will be worth $11 billion. The virtual economy. And last year, Microsoft launched HoloLens, which is the first time really we're starting to mass-produce technology, which will bring augmented reality into our lives. And the difference with virtual reality and augmented reality is augmented reality mixes physical assets with virtual assets. So they'll look something like this. No need for screens anymore. And we'll just keep working and designing and shaping and innovating, but also teaching. This is a father teaching his daughter how to do plumbing, whilst he's able to draw and point at the same time. And it'll obviously change the way that we play. A world where these two realities are merging. Meet Ava. She works at airports around the world, New York, including Dubai. She's always happy. She never takes holidays 24/7. She's at work. She looks great. She's made up. She's everything. But she's a hologram. And yet this hologram is every day conducting customer service to their customers in these different airports around the world. And of course, augmented reality can have serious implications as well. Because we have about 2/3 of the world that do not have access to life-changing operations. We have areas that are war-torn, which can't access doctors, or doctors get harmed when they go to these areas. So augmented reality will also help us conduct operations where a doctor in New York, in Sweden, in Tokyo, can do the operation and show the person on the ground how to conduct this operation. The fifth is robots. More and more, robots are going to be part of our lives. This is the Henna Hotel in Japan. The Henna Hotel is going to use Android robots to clean, to deliver goods and services, to bring baggages upstairs. But the advantage here is that a hotel in this area would cost you about $180 to $255 a night. And because of the competitive advantage here, it'll cost $60 a night. That's the difference. But robots is nothing new. You've been using them for camel racing and other activities in the Middle East for a long time. But what might be new is 3 million people is the prediction of how many people by 2020 will be reporting directly to a robot. And finally, artificial intelligence. Machine learning, the concept that your machine becomes smarter and smarter and smarter, and it learns from itself. Already today, Google has an app which allows you to take a picture of a dish, and it'll tell you exactly how many calories that dish has. And it learns to get better and better. But we're starting to use it in testing medical before we launch them. It's starting to be used in finance to avoid risk. It's the idea that the machine learns and becomes more intelligent. And by 2019, a $4,000 computer will have the same brain power as a human being and surpass it already by 2019. That is the difference between today and yesterday. We never had machines that learned yesterday. Today we have machines that are learning. So this is a little bit in quickly describing to you what we can do today that we couldn't do before because of innovation in digital technology. Now I would like to talk about a new player, a new key player that is here today because of innovation in digital technology. All that I described at the beginning means that the same technology is in the hands of the general public that used to be the privilege of organization. And what this technology is doing is decreasing the entry barriers, access to capital, access to distribution, access to marketing, access to consumers. And what it is doing, it is democratizing value creation. It means anyone can create value and commercialize this value in a significant way. Before, this used to be the privilege of large organizations. Today, every single individual here, outside of work, when they're busy just being a person, can commercialize value in a significant way. I'm going to give you 4 examples of democratization which will show you the power that the public is getting today. The first one is democratization of finance. The fact that anyone now, if they have an idea or innovation, can access finance if they want to. If you look at a site like Kickstarter, which is a peer-to-peer lending site. But the interesting thing about Kickstarter is that since its inception in 2009, it has generated $2 billion worth of funding, one site, $2 billion from the general public to the general public. And there are 93,815 projects that exist today, innovation projects that would not have existed if we didn't have one site, Kickstarter. Start multiplying it with other crowdfunding sites, and you start seeing the importance of this particular industry. And when Samsung needed an Internet of Things technology, they did not go internally. They went and bought a company that was developed in Kickstarters. So one of the world's largest technology companies did not develop their own technology for Internet of Things. They bought the company because it came from Kickstarter. And you have your own, you have your own version of this in this region as well. Now, crowdfunding of ideas is the next one, which democratizing, of course, ideation. Anyone can have an idea today. So sites like sites like Quirky in New York allows people to post an idea, an invention, allows the people on that site to contribute to that invention to make it even better. And when Quirky helps them go to market, whoever has contributed positively to this idea will be rewarded at the end of it as well. So this is worldwide collaboration, possibly, because there are no borders in this world. Muji, because I hear often from my clients, yes, but the ideas that we get when we crowdsource are never as good as the ideas we have internally. By that rationale, the collective intelligence of the entire world is inferior to the one you have in your own organizations. I find that hard to believe, and Muji agrees, because they've gone public to say that the products that they sell, that were crowdsources with the public, collaborated with the public, sells better than the products that they develop themselves internally. Democratization of distribution and manufacturing. You're well familiar with sites like Etsy, which people develop things with their hands, called the maker movement, and part of the passion economy, where things are created because people are passionate. And Etsy are then creating those things. People are Etsy, like, for example, a necklace with a tiny little Nutella jar, and they're selling these online. And there's over $50 million of sales a month on Etsy on one site only. And the version in the future of this, of course, is just launching Formsfield, which is the same concept of Etsy. You create, but instead you have the opportunity to have the file sent to you, and you can 3D print your particular, what you've bought, or you can ask them to do it for you. So democratization really at place here. And finally, democratization of communications. And already a few years ago in Egypt, we saw the potential power of social networks in communication. But from a business perspective, the reality is, again, in your hands, in your phone, you are 4 separations away from an audience of 250 million. If you're connected to 120 people, you can, 4 degrees of separation away, communicate to 250 million if everyone decides to retweet or post whatever you have said. That is twice the size of the Super Bowl audience, which is the most expensive advertising space you can buy. You could be twice as important as the Super Bowl. And that's exactly what happened when the iPad was launched in 2010, when Apple benefited from 17 million links talking about a product that didn't even exist yet. It hadn't been launched. It was being launched the next day, and 17 million links discussing something that didn't even exist yet. This is called earned media. This is media you earn because of your innovation, because of how you behave, because of what you do. It is not bought, it is not owned, you earn it. You earn it by building trust and respect from the public that now has this power. And that is exactly why Chili's in the United States spent $750,000 in developing a gloss for their buns so they would look good on Instagram when people posted them online. 750,000. So today, we have to accept that the most important media channel is in fact the public. But it doesn't always work for us. Like United Airlines found out a handful of years ago when Ed Carolan traveled for a concert and his guitar broke. Well, they broke his guitar, but they didn't just break his guitar, they didn't care that they broke his guitar. So what did he do? He wrote a song called United Breaks Guitars. And he posted it online, and it had 15 million views. That is 3 times the audience of Barack Obama's inauguration speech a few years ago. So 3 times more people interested in United breaking guitars than us having our first black president in the United States of America. But that isn't the most interesting. The most interesting is affected to a downward price of 10% of the share price of United, of a value of 180 million. Because that's the power the public has today. Because that's called brand democratization. We do not own our brands anymore. People can, if they want to, make our brands and destroy our brands. So I've described to you this new player, the public, that we cannot ignore. It's going to shape the economy. It's going to be part of the economy, and it's someone that we need to take seriously and work with and collaborate with. So, then what are the new business realities compared to what I started this presentation? Well, first of all, as you can see, we have empowered players. Companies are more empowered than they've ever been before. People are more empowered than they've never been before. We have merging of realities. We're coming to an end where we're going to separate physical and virtual reality. It will simply be reality. We have prolific innovation. Innovation will come from everywhere, and it'll be very unpredictable, which means that if we are not the one innovating, are going to have competition that is going to be very hard to work against. It's going to be service-based value creation. It's going to be services that are built around the products that we are developing that we learn to monetize. It's not enough anymore to just innovate in products and think we can succeed. We have to have services that are up around it, and we have to innovate in our organizations to be able to deliver on it. And finally, we're going to have emerging business models. We're going to have business models that we have never seen before, that we have no idea how to compete against, but we're also going to be able to deliver some of these business models ourselves. One thing is for sure, the business environment will not be predictable anymore. The business environment will not be stable anymore. And this world will look very, very different moving forward than the world that we've done businesses until today. So to finish off, what are the requirements for success? Well, first of all, a region needs entrepreneurship. And secondly, organizations need to resonate. And for both, we need innovation. We absolutely need innovation so that our regions can have entrepreneurship, but so that organizations can also transform and have the resonance they need to have for the 21st century. So in terms of entrepreneurship, we need access to capital. There is no doubt. This is a cash-rich region, but not necessarily the amount of startup capital that we need. If we look at all the successful parts of the world with a lot of innovation, not only do they have access to capital, but the decisions work fast. So it's easy to do things quickly. The second thing we need is, of course, access to talent. We need access to talent, but we need access, first of all, business acumen. So we need talented people to come back and be mentors for the remaining. We need to educate them in the right way, because the education that we need today is actually in science, technology, and engineering. And in about 2030, they predict that 60% of people graduating in this field will come from China. We need to educate our people in the skills that are required to be successful moving forward. And we also need to add to that business acumen. Never become more important than today. And finally, we have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. We have to be able to merge the pride of our history, of our past, of our culture, of what we have achieved, with creating also for the future. So what does it take for an organization to be resonant? What would it take for an organization to be resonant? How do they have to innovate? Well, first of all, We have to start becoming agnostic. We cannot see the world or analyze the world from the perspective of the industry that we're in or the business problem that we have. We have to read the world agnostically, see exactly what's happening, and then bring that into the context of our own organizations and what we need to do. We have to be learning organizations. We have a lot to learn. We have to accept that we need to learn. We have to accept that we need to measure different things to define success than we did in the past. We just have to learn. We can't just exploit, we also have to explore. Business is there to exploit so we can gain from what we've achieved, but we have to explore. We have to dedicate resources to explore and understand where revenue of tomorrow is going to come from. We absolutely have to collaborate across industries, across regions, across functions, across hierarchies. And finally, we have to embrace, celebrate the past, but also embrace change. One of the most successful managers ever and CMOs ever or CEOs ever said, if the rate of change outside an organization is faster than inside, the end is near. We have to learn to change and be flexible very fast. We have to put the fear of change behind us. In this room, preferably. So I'm back at where I started. It's the best of times, it is the worst of times. And today, I really truly understand what my CMO meant when he said, it is the worst of times. Because for the organizations that do not understand what I have shared with you today and more, this will be the worst of times. 52% is the figure of the organizations that were in the Fortune 500 in 2000 that are still there today. We lost 48% of them. And I believe for the people who do not understand what we're talking about here today and the need for innovation, this figure will be a lot higher. However, I'm a digital realist, but I'm also a digital optimist. And I really do believe that for the organizations who do understand what I've spoken about today, who knows how to analyze the external world, contextualize it to their particular situation, prioritize what is needed to prioritize, strategize, and finally operationalize, because this is very much an organizational leadership question, this will truly be the best of times, because in these times, everything is truly possible if we work together. So please, thank you so much for having taken the time to listen to me today.